you are.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to recognize that the area that we call the Fraser Valley Regional District has been home to Indigenous peoples for generations. There are 31 communities with reserve lands in the FERD's jurisdiction and as many as 69 groups with interest in the area. We honor our commitment to collaboration, inclusion, and reconciliation in our work here today and call to order the February 13th meeting of the Regional Corporate Services Committee meeting this morning. Right, first item, please.
Thank you. Looking for approval of the agenda, and late items.
So moved, Madam Chair.
By Director Facio, second by Director Castle. All in favor? Next item, please. Motion passes.
Item 4.1 is the draft Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting minutes of January 16th, 2025.
Moved by Director Smith, second Director Pranger. All in favor? And opposed? Motion's carried. Next item.
5.1 is the Fraser Valley Regional District 2025 to 2029 Financial Plan Bylaw number 1769.
Mover. Moved by Director Siemens, second by Director Clute. Sorry. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
5.2 is Service Area Establishment Bylaw Amendment Requisition Increase for 2025.
We have a mover? Director McConaughey, do we have a seconder? Director Popov, comments or questions? All in favor? Motion's carried. Next item.
5.3 is the Fraser Valley Regional District. Oh, sorry. There was actually two motions on that one.
Oh, apologies. That's my fault. So that first motion was for motion number 1, I'm assuming. So we have a motion number 2. Moved. Do we have a seconder? Seconded. All in favor? Motion's carried. Next item.
Next is 5.3, which is the Fraser Valley Regional District Sub-Regional Transit Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1757.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Moved by Director Facio. Do we have a seconder? Director Castle. All in favor? Motion's carried. Next item.
6.1.1 is the Abbotsford and Agassiz Air Quality Monitoring Stations Licenses of Occupation.
Motion by Director Pranger, seconded by Director Siemens. All in favor? Motion's carried. Next item.
6.1.2 is the Invasive Weed Control Program Service Agreement.
We have a motion. Director Smith, seconded. Director Castle. Comments or questions? None. All in favor? Motion's carried. Next item.
6.2.1 is a grant application request for support from Boston Bar First Nation.
Yeah, seconded first. So, Director McConaughey, do we have a seconder? Director Clute, comments or questions? All in favor? Motion's carried. Next item.
6.3.1 is the Rural Transit Needs Assessment and Action Plan Update.
Mover. Director Horn, do we have a seconder? Director Wardenberg. Any comments? No. All in favor? And opposed? Motion's carried. Next item.
7.1 is an information item. It's the fourth quarter quarterly report for 2024. Some stats and figures from our organization.
All right. We need a motion. Director McConaughey, seconder.
Oh, there's no motion needed, just if there were any questions.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
No comments or questions. All right, next item.
Next is 7.2, which is the 2025 Advocacy and LMLGA resolutions.
Nope, sorry.
My apologies. Director Castle, you did inform me that you wanted to speak to this and separate them up, correct?
Yeah, I'm just asking for the committee if we can separate the second paragraph, the and that, with the advocacy for 14 issues.
Director Horn?
Just a point of order, and I'll refer this from you to staff. I think the motion is severable under Robert's rules for resolution 1 and resolution 2, but not the text and the whereases. And they would be basically subject to an amendment if we were going to move them differently. I would just ask that we check that with the corporate officer, because they're not clauses that stand separately.
Okay.
So it would be a matter of amending, not separating.
Can we get clarification? And then perhaps after we get that answer, Director Castle, you can explain your reasoning.
Through the chair to Director Horn, I would see this as dividable, as they're two separate topics. We have the advocacy where we have the, on the other hand, we have the resolutions. And so in my opinion, I think that these could be considered separately, the advocacy on one side and the resolutions to forward to the LMLGA separately.
I see. So maybe I'm misunderstanding what the Director Castle is asking for. The motion, the portion that says, and that the Fraser Valley Regional District staff, the board direct staff to further, that's what you're asking to sever, dealt with separately? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, can I get clarification? Because we did have a mover and a seconder before. I remembered that Director Castle wanted to mention that. So
I don't believe we had a seconder, actually.
We
Chair
didn't have a
Ross. I think
seconder?
we had a mover.
okay. So should I take his full motion?
I think it'd be best if we just have.
Yeah,
our
can you give
corporate
me
officer
some
weigh
advice
in.
on how to
Yeah.
handle this?
Absolutely. So once we have an item that has been moved and seconded, it belongs to the body as a whole.
Okay,
What you can do, so the body has two options here. You can either unanimously agree to withdraw that mover and seconder, or you can vote on it. I would recommend option 1. If you're all in agreement, you can remove that mover and seconder, and you can have a new mover and seconder on a new motion.
well, we didn't have a seconder.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Sorry, but we've had this exact conversation before. Severability happens after mover and seconder and is always in order. It's
Okay.
not a decision of the board. It's as soon as it's moved, it's a decision of the chair. So we need a seconder,
Right? Do we have a
but then we
seconder?
would just simply vote on those matters as separate items.
Do we have a seconder? Director McCahon? All right.
And I guess now I'd like to request that we sever those. Is that right?
Correct?
Yes. Perfect. And I'm sorry, I didn't intend to cause such a commotion. I would like to have a conversation about the 14 issues for advocacy, and I don't want to stop the resolutions, the vote on the resolutions. That's why I'm asking to sever it.
Okay.
Procedurally, just call the question on the portion that he doesn't have an issue with, and then debate.
Yep. So I'm calling the question. If there's no further debate, all in favor? Any opposed? None carry. Right. Now go ahead. Director Castle, please.
Thank you. So the reason that I wanted to break this out and have a bit of a conversation, I was a little bit overwhelmed, I think is the right word, when I opened up the report and saw this, what I considered to be quite a lengthy, extensive list of issues that we're asking our staff to spend time developing an advocacy plan on. And so I've just got a few questions with regards to that. My first question is, this advocacy work that's being done, how is this work funded? Which service area do we have that funds advocacy work, and who is doing this work?
Through the chair to Director Castle, largely advocacy is handled by the CAO and the manager of communications. In the instance where there are subject matter experts in the building, we would often need to go and rely on those particular subject matter experts. In some cases, that might be in the planning department, or some cases that might be in the environmental services department. It really just depends on the advocacy issue that's in play.
So that being said, we don't necessarily have funding in place for this work, is what I'm hearing. And so do we have a policy around this sort of work in terms of is 14 items issues, is that an acceptable amount of work in a given year? Especially on some of these topics that don't seem to have a direct impact on the services that the Fraser Valley Regional District provides.
Through the chair to Director Castle, I would say that 14 issues of advocacy is probably extraordinary for this size of organization. I'm not certain what other local government jurisdictions typically manage within their advocacy programs, but I would say that this is quite extensive.
And just to drill one more question, well, two more in one, just to kind of drill down on some of the work. I'm interested in knowing what is involved with monitoring an issue and who is doing the monitoring. And with regards to meeting requests with ministers, is this something that is typically done through staff, or is this maybe more effectively done kind of elected to elected? My own experience of reaching out to a minister it proved to be quite positive, and I'm just wondering, is that work that ought to be done by electeds versus having staff trying to coordinate these meetings with ministers? So what's involved with monitoring and meetings with ministers?
Through the chair to Director Castle, in terms of monitoring, I would say that as part of your CAO's regularly scheduled activities, it is my responsibility to keep abreast of things that are happening provincially and nationally, and so it would just be part of my regular work. I would also say that the manager of communications is part of their role in terms of issues management and forecasting ahead where there may be issues that are arising in other jurisdictions that may have alignment with regional districts. They would also undertake that work. So that's essentially what monitoring means, is just being aware of when there might be developments on these particular subjects. In terms of the minister meetings, typically those are attended by elected officials. Yes, staff would support by reaching out to the ministry staff to make those arrangements. Sometimes the CAO would attend with the elected officials in order to provide them with that support. Briefing notes were necessary, and helping to identify what follow-up might be needed if necessary. So sort of as the key staff contact on a particular item.
Thank you. It's really important to me after reading that report to get clarification on how this work's being done and how it directly impacts the funded services that we provide at the regional district. And I think just coming out of what I think was a really great, robust budgeting debate, where we talked a lot about fiscal restraint and kind of making sure that we're allocating the right resources to the services that we provide. I was just a little bit, I am concerned when I see this list of work that it seems to be on the sides of desks of staff who are already have a huge workload that we've put on them. So I wouldn't be supporting this motion to have staff work on these 14 issues in 2025. I don't have an alternative. I know that these issues came out of the two advocacy committees that we have, but I just really wanted to express my concern about the amount of work that we're asking staff to do that I don't believe is directly related to what we do at the regional district.
Director Horn.
Thank you. Just perhaps to create some comfort here, having participated in the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, staff did talk at that meeting about capacity and gave us a kind of reality check as we carried forward with what was doable and what wasn't doable. And I would point out that out of the 14, 2 of them have just been dealt with. 8 of them are in monitor state. And I appreciate the question from Director Castle. I think the monitoring will also live with the elected people around this body. And I think that's where some of it came from. Director Clute, for example, raised something that was very much alive in Chilliwack that day. And so a lot of these were monitor meant wait and see, I think was largely the tone. I would also point out that of those 4 remaining areas, 3 of them are meeting requests, and I think largely will happen around LMLGA or UBCM. And they represent perhaps efficiencies looked at from a different perspective, because we're often at loggerheads on issues. We really need to be able to move forward with our provincial partners, particularly on sometimes other governmental bodies. But I think that the lens that the committee took is advocacy a good value of our resources? And in some cases, without advocacy, we may be actually wasting more resources by speaking in an echo chamber or moving forward with plans that we have no sense of how realistic they may be. So I hear the question, and I think it's a really important one. I do think the lens that was applied in those discussions, I wasn't at the EA advisory, maybe somebody from there can speak to it, but I think that lens has been applied and will continue to be applied.
Thank you, Director Horn, for that clarification. And I would just add as well that this work was not meant to be additional workload on already overtaxed staff. What it was intended to do was make the work that we're already doing more focused in advocacy and a little more organized. So I'm hoping that this will actually streamline things a little bit. That was the intent. So, and it is capacity driven. We don't want to overload the staff that we have, and we don't want to have to hire more people to do this advocacy work. So it is capacity driven as well. So if that gives you any comfort, I hope it does. Director Siemens.
Thank you. I appreciate Director Castle bringing this up, because that is my concern as well. And we do have to be mindful, but sometimes we go down, it sounds like a really good idea, but we're doing it in isolation of obviously capacity and some of the other work plans. So I just want to ensure that staff is going to be brutally honest with us. If we push the gas pedal too hard on some of the advocacy work, we need to understand what the repercussions are, because if this is taken away from other priority work, we can get ourselves into a bit of a bind, and then there's no end to the staffing requests. And I just want to make sure that we're staying focused on our core responsibilities. And some of this advocacy work is important, but it's already being done at other levels and maybe through the municipalities. So I just want to make sure that we do stay hyper focused and that we send a clear message to staff that they will let us know if there's a capacity issue, because if we're dropping some of our core responsibilities in order to do this, this is how we get ourselves into trouble. And not to make too much of a political statement, that's kind of what happened at the federal level. And then everybody dogs piles and it gets all pushed down to us. I just want to make sure we're not taking on too much and then creating ourselves a whole new set of financial challenges. So,
thank you, Director Siemens. And I think Ms. Kinnaman knows me well enough by now that she can bring that say to me very candidly. We don't have the capacity for this. If you did before, you do now. So we do need that candor from our staff. Absolutely. Thank you. Next is Director McConick.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing that up, Director Castle. I think those are good questions and need to be asked. My thoughts are, as part of the advocacy committee, that there was prioritizing some of the different issues. Some are putting in the parking lot. And I just want to have us think as a board a little bit about advocacy and the bigger picture. So, and Director Ross talked about, the municipalities doing some of the work. I believe that if we would have had an advocacy committee years ago and had somebody looking out and eye on the radar and the horizon, we may not be stuck with what we're doing right now with the sewage problem. So, and this is costing a lot more money and a lot more staff time and taking a lot of our time sitting around the board table debating it. So I think advocacy and having an eye out on the horizon for things that are coming is absolutely critical so that we do have cost savings, because, otherwise we get these surprises and we have all the other variables that we have right now with climate events and that. So it's critical that we have these advocacy committees, and I fully understand the demands on staff, but I think that all of us here would rather have something that is on a parking lot. And okay, this is going to happen. Laws are changing, policies changing, climate's changing, and we can get in front of those and not end up with a situation where the municipalities cannot take sewage from the rural areas and it's created a little bit of friction. It's caused big costs of that. And this is something I think that could be helpful in other areas as well. So I feel really strongly about this. And I think it's really important that we do it. And I think it's really important that we ask those questions that, are we doing this mindfully? Are we making sure that, staff can approach our chair and just say, hey, but also that we have, our eyes out so that we're not caught with these huge expenses and challenges that we have today, such as the sewage issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Facio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for all the comments from all the directors. I agree with all of them, but myself personally, sitting at this table for many years, I have full confidence in our staff, our CEO and all her staff. I'm sure if they became overwhelmed at any time, they would be coming to us as they have done in the past. They have the experience, and I know, as far as I'm personally concerned, that I have full confidence that they will carry out the work of the Fraser Valley Regional District as they've done up to now, and extra work is something that they look at. Sure, they have discussions with their staff, probably every Monday or every Sunday during the week to see how things are moving along. And I like to leave these things in their hands. They're the experts, and I have full confidence in them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other speakers? Oh, Director Klug.
Thank you. Just for clarification from staff. So out of the 14 items that have been identified, 5 of them are currently, 2 of them are going to a resolution and 3 are going to, I believe, a meeting request. So is it accurate to say that 9 of these items are in the monitoring stage? It's not technically 14 or 8 or 9? Yeah.
Through the chair to Director Klug, I think that your observations and those at the table are quite valid. I think that many of these, in terms of the amount of work that might be required or the impact on staff, is probably not too onerous at this particular point in time. I think that what the real advantage of this process has been, though, and the development of collating all of these things together, is that it's probably representing the first time in my memory where we're all aware of how many issues of advocacy are floating around out there. Whereas in the past, they sort of pop up organically throughout the year, and we don't really have our arms wrapped around it in terms of what that work looks like. And so I think that this has been a really healthy conversation. I don't have any concerns per se at this particular moment in terms of capacity, but I think that it's worthwhile to keep our eyes on that. going forward, and an understanding that with all of the other work plan priorities, of course, we triage everything that we do here, and some of these items might have to sit to the side in favor of other things that are already on the work plan. So I'm pleased that we have a spreadsheet now of where things are at, and it keeps us all on track of where we need to be monitoring things, and we haven't lost sight of things. So one of the other pieces is that you bring forward a resolution to UBCM, we go to the meeting, we get a response from UBCM, and then nothing happens. And so this now, we've put a pin in it, and now we can all revisit it through this process. So I'm really happy that there's some structure around it now. I don't have any capacity concerns right at this moment. The number is extraordinary, yes, but I don't think that we're in a danger zone.
Director Pranger.
Thank you to everyone, Chair, for the discussion. And I think this helps us think as a regional district, and that we aren't individual municipalities and areas, but we can talk to one another and think as a region. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before I go back to Director Castle for the first time? No, Director Castle.
Thank you. And again, I just want to thank everyone for this conversation and for putting some context around this report, which, by the way, was an enormous amount of work done in a very short period of time. So thank you to staff for that. I agree with the importance of the advocacy. I'm just concerned that without some sort of policy or guideline, I don't know about anyone else, but I, in my career, have sometimes found it awkward to tell my employer if I've got too much work on my plate. And I would hate to put our staff in a situation where they don't feel comfortable, and that could lead to burnout. So I maybe just ask the committees, the advocacy committees, to maybe consider discussing some sort of policy or parameter around our advocacy work, noting limitations in staff capacity and funding to do the work.
Thank you. And I do appreciate you bringing this up, Director Castle. And I think this is a really important message for our staff to hear, that we are concerned about their workload, and we want you to feel free to tell us when you're feeling overloaded. So thank you for bringing it up. Victor Smith. Director Smith.
Hi. Yeah. So, Castle, I agree with you on that. The fact is, staff is getting things done, but you want to make sure they're not doing a Band-Aid on it, because they're trying to do everything, and you're doing a great job. So if you can kind of narrow it down a bit, and I think that's what, we're trying to do, is trying to narrow it down so they can do well on less instead of Band-Aid a lot of things. And everybody thinks they're juggling things. You go like, one day we're going to drop the ball, and everybody wants to be dark side. But good for you bringing it up there. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there are no further comments, I'm going to call the question for the second part. All in favor? Are you in favor, Director Castle? No. So you're the only one opposed? All right. All those opposed. Thank you. The motion is carried. All right. Next item, please.
Moving down to item 9.1, information and correspondence. We have a letter from the District of Hope.
Thank you. Are there anyone wish to speak to this? Director Smith?
Yeah. So having looked at like our numbers in our community, it's 5 people in our community would be 70% of our crime, to address it and that. But other towns and other ones, Agassiz might have 2, Harrison might have 1, but if we can get them to do something to start arresting some of these people and set an example. So anyway, it's just to reach out, because they got to start somewhere. It's pretty frustrating. I mean, we're a small community. I can only imagine Chilliwack, Mission, and Abbotsford, your numbers compared to us, but I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, Director Dickey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just speaking to Director Smith's comments, I remember years ago there was a police chief in Vancouver with the name of Jimmy Chu, and he wrote a column in the Vancouver Sun, And he talked about in the United States, in areas there was a policy of 3 strikes and you're out. And he said, if I could have 50 strikes and you're out, it would severely reduce the amount of criminal activity within Vancouver. Yeah. That's the problem.
Thank you. Director Popov?
And just briefly, Mayor Ken Sims is going to announce some major strategic plan to deal with this afternoon. There's going to be a news conference, so it'll be interesting to see what he has in mind, and maybe we can back end it as well from, you know, like in our communities too. So it'll be interesting to see what he has in mind. So just want to put it out there.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? All right. Next item.
Moving down to reports by directors.
Any reports? No? All right. Next item.
And moving to public question period for items relevant to the agenda, we'll just turn things over to our Deputy Corporate Officer, Lauren Olenek.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. We do not have any members of the public joining us in person or online today, and we have not received any written correspondence.
All right. Thank you. Then that leaves us with a motion to close.
So move, Madam Chair.
Director Facio, do we have a seconder? Moved by Director Smith. All in favor? And opposed, motion's carried.
Okay, just give us a couple of minutes to set up the room.
So, but if he's got some idea, I like to know.